Hi, this is DebiAnn of Unlimited Opportunities Promotional and Marketing Solutions, and you've tuned into our Business Buddy event. On this episode of Business Buddy, we are speaking with the one and only Richard Cottom of Sovereign Security, located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Here, Richard is talking to us about government contracting, private contracting, and building relationships. Stay tuned as the meeting is already in session. And once again, thank you for joining our Business Buddy event.
The government looks for when they look out to source various companies. Now, my notes, I'm on my iPad and my notes just closed up on me. Bear with me 1 second. As I mentioned prior to when I first started talking, was to make sure that your company gets your certifications as a minority business or a diverse business. And those types of certifications, the best way to get one, if you don't have one, is to go through NMSDC, which stands for the National Minority Supplier Diversity Council. And that council is the agency that does a national certification for businesses and minority-owned businesses. And they have a standard that they use that the government accepts. And so I would encourage you, if you do not have that certification, I would go get that certification. It's not difficult to do. All you have to do is go through the process of filling out the paperwork and providing all the information that they request.
Right. I remember you told me to do this years ago when I first got started, and I was like, that's a bunch of bull. I don't feel like going through all that hoop and stuff. And I put it off, and I kept putting it off for years and years and years. And then finally the pandemic hit, and I was like, all right, let me go back to the beginning and regroup. And I saw in my notes where I had written down when you specifically told me to do these things. And as I started implementing it, and as soon as I did that, I got big government contracts. It's crazy. I was like, all I had to do was listen to him in the first place years ago.
Well, one of the things that I did say when I started was I was going to try to get as much business as I possibly could, being a minority. I mean, other organizations, other people, other races, they do it and they use it. So why shouldn't I? And we do have that as an advantage to us. Certainly, I'm not asking for you to give me the business because I'm Black. I'm asking you to give me the business because I'm capable of handling the business. And which leads me to the next part of what I was going to say was, when the government looks for companies, they look at past performance. And the first thing you need to do is put together a capability statement. And your capability statement clearly outlines what it is good goods or service that you provide, as well as your capabilities of performing whatever the contract is you're looking to do. And they just want a 1-page, 2-page sheet that they can look at and say, okay, this company we're looking to buy widgets, and this company sells widgets. They've been in business for X amount of years. They have X number of employees. And here's their past performances. So part of your capability statement is to outline that information. And then that information is also found on the SBA.gov. You'll find that I refer back to the SBA.gov a lot because it's a wealth of resources for small businesses. The best thing I could suggest you do is to try to develop a relationship with someone in the local SBA office. And that's not hard to do because they're there to help you. So my suggestion would be that, I don't know where people are calling from or but contact your local SBA, and they're going to be able to help you to position you to get the contracts that you'd like to get from the federal government. Now, the federal government is because there's a lot of people swimming in that pool, you got to be able to differentiate your company from another company. And I've always said part of business is relationships. Develop a relationship with the SBA, develop a relationship with that governmental contract agency that's looking specifically, that buyer that's looking for what it is they're looking for. If they're looking for widgets, you find out who that contracting agent is, and you try to develop a relationship with that person. So that way, when opportunities come along, they're going to pick up the phone and say, hey, or they're going to send you an email and say, hey, we're about to let this contract go out. We're going to do an RFQ and RFP, and would your company be interested in doing that? Because it now makes their job much easier. And I've been talking about the federal government, but state and local government acts the same way. They work the same way when it comes to small business and minority business as they let out contracts. They look for the same type of thing. So it's important. It's definitely important for you to get either a state local SBA designation or MBE designation, or whatever your designation would be, and one from the National Minority Supplier Diversity Council, because that's going to help you get the business that you need. Now, that works for the federal government, but it also works in the private sector as well, because you find that a lot of private sector companies at some point does some type of reporting or some type of relationship with the government, whether they're supplying them with whatever, and they are required to do a spend as well. So if there's a governmental subcontractor, even though they're a private company, they're going to be able to count whatever money they spend with your company and your organization towards their MBE or diverse spend. I'll say diverse spend. They're going to, whatever it is they're going to do, they're going to count those numbers towards their bottom line numbers. So when they make the report to the government, they can say, oh yes, we subcontracted $1 million out to XYZ company and they provided XYZ service. So, I mean, it's important that you, when looking to get these relationships and looking to get these jobs, it goes back to relationships and certifications. Now, just because you're certified, just because you're a minority, doesn't mean you're going to get the business. We've come close to a lot of contracts and didn't get them for various reasons. But we didn't let it stop us, and you shouldn't allow it. Just because you don't get this one doesn't mean you're not going to get the next one. So it's important to know to be a part of these agencies and the various governmental contracting companies or contracting officers is to develop those relationships. Develop a relationship with the banker. Develop a relationship with an attorney. Develop a relationship with an accountant. Because what's going to happen is when they ask for your past performance and your capabilities, you're going to have to produce financials, personal financials, company financials, and information that your accountant will be able to readily put in place for you. The other thing I wanted to talk about was to also join, if you're a part of a chamber of commerce, or if you're not part of a chamber of commerce, I would do that as well. You'll find that it's networking opportunity, but it's also an opportunity to develop your business. People tend to do business with people that they know. And a lot of the major chambers have a lot of the major buyers or people from various organizations that are members of those chambers. I'm on the board of the African American Chamber of Commerce in this area. And they're, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. But I don't, just join your chamber. That if there's a minority chamber, join it. If they don't have a minority chamber, then join the Chamber of Commerce anyway. But at the end of the day, it's all about developing the relationships, networking and developing. That's because you're going to be your best salesperson at the end of the day.
So I have a question. So when you're networking through the pandemic has changed so much, and a lot of the things are virtual now, how is it that newbies coming into the chambers are getting their foot in the door and meeting and mixing and mingling with those who are already existing and established in there?
Well, believe it or not, as a part of the chamber, what happens is a lot of the meetings have been virtual, just like everything else has been. Now, as things starting to open back up, I actually have a board meeting Thursday, and it'll be the first in-person board meeting that we've had. And they're having a holiday gathering in a couple weeks. We haven't had that. So as a business owner, if you join the chambers, the various chambers, they're going to let you know when they have their meetings. And one of the things that, as a part of a chamber, I know what we do is, as board members, we are given information of the new members that join. And so because they're embracing new members and new businesses or old businesses, it's the perfect opportunity to really connect up. You'll be surprised who you may know that's already on the chamber. You don't realize they're on the chamber. Deb, you're on mute.
Touching myself here. For the private sector, though, when a lot of the people on the call, they own a virtual call center and they're trying to move into doing business outside of what their current companies are. So they're like going to the small, I would throw an example out for a funeral home or something. Like, how would you suggest a newbie go to a business that you know might need your service, but not sure how to go about drawing up a contract, or if their budget is too high or too low? Like, how do you do those type of conversations?
Well,
a funeral home that might need somebody to follow up with their after call sales or after death sales and stuff like that. How would you suggest a newbie who has a virtual call center or virtual assistants go out and say, hey, instead of you making these calls, let my agents do it for you?
Well, I mean, that piece goes to the marketing of the company in terms of developing a marketing cut sheet. And what I mean by that is, if you know your business, and to use an example that you have is follow-up, customer service follow-up or call center follow-up to funeral homes, I would develop a marketing cut sheet that I'm going to direct specifically to the funeral homes or the funeral directors. Now, those types of businesses, they typically have an agent, an association. And so if there's an association that's associated with the type of business that you serve or you target, then I would join that association. You may not be able to join as a member, but you might be able to join as an associate member. So, if I had a call center and that's the type of industry that I go after, then I would join the Funeral Directors Association as an associate member, as a dues paying associate member. So you get access to those people. And the other thing is, if they don't have an agency, then certainly that's when you you do your direct marketing, directly contact that funeral home, make a cold call, or a drop by, but at least put your marketing materials together and send it out to them, even after a phone call or a personal visit.
When you first started years ago, what was your struggle? Where did you find it most difficult at?
It's still a struggle. Certainly my biggest struggle was to find the business. Mm-hmm. When you're starting a business from scratch and you actually have office space and you move into the office space, but you don't have any business. It's a struggle. But I mean, once you get your foot out there, and once you get the word out there and the company recognition out there, I mean, the biggest struggle I thought when I first started was, people knew me, and they would say, oh yeah, start your business, I'll give you business. Well, they don't give you business right away because they want to see if you're going to be able to handle the business. So initially the biggest struggle was making sure, you're calling your friends up to say, hey, I started my business. You told me to come give you, you're going to give us some business, but now I got to go prove myself by finding other business just so I can come back to get your business. And that was a struggle, but certainly financing. And that's why I said develop a relationship with the bank. We have a couple of them. We have, we deal with United Bank of Philadelphia, which is an African-American bank. And we also deal with a couple other banks where there's a strong sense of helping small businesses, because a lot of the larger banks are so big that you can't get through to somebody that can give you that assistance. So that's when you find out you meet up with the smaller banks, the federal credit unions, the various credit union type banks, and develop a relationship with them. Because at the end of the day, you may need to open up a line of credit and, or whatever the case may be. And if you don't have a relationship with the banker, the first thing they're going to say is, well, how long have you been in business? How much business do you have? What kind of assets do you have as collateral? And one of the things that when I started this business was I refused to put my house up for any kind of collateral. And so, it was a struggle, but I refuse to do that because you don't have to do that. And a lot of non-minority companies and owners didn't have to do that. So it's important that you develop a relationship with the banker and an accountant, and obviously an attorney. So the attorney, and there's a lot of attorneys out there that work with small businesses, and there are actually small business resources. Temple University's Small Business Center, they help small businesses with legal information, contract information. They have the resources in play. The Enterprise Center out in West Philadelphia, they have the resources in play, and they pay people to do that, to help assist small businesses. And again, going back to the Small Business Administration, even if you're not going after federal contracts, the Small Business Association is still there to help you as a small business. Whether you're going after federal contracts or private contracts, they're there to help you as a small business.
So with this Biden's new building back better initiative, there's more money going out towards the small business and African American businesses or minority owned businesses. How difficult is it to tap into that as a newbie if you haven't been in business prior to the pandemic?
Well, what they'll do is based on what your business is, they'll look at your experience. And when you get in those kind of situations where you're a new company and you're trying to tap into this new money that's coming with the infrastructure bill and all the other stuff, that's when you partner up and do a strategic partnership with other companies. So as a small company, you might be able to go after a contract if you partner up with another company that does the same type of services that is a small business. So you can pull your resources in terms of, all right, we're going to go after this contract together. And I've done that with other companies where, other small minority owned businesses where we said, okay, fine. They're going to look at the national companies. So let's team up and try to go after this business together. And we've been successful in doing that.
If when you're doing that, how do you get past well, I guess you got to build goes back to the relationship building, because a lot of times I've been burnt doing that exact same thing, go partner up with someone who's like-minded but been burnt. And I guess that goes by to the relationship. You have to know who you're getting in bed with, I guess, right?
Oh, absolutely. When you partner up with another company, it's like a marriage, and you got to be able to trust them, because at the end of the day, they could stab you in the back, and I don't know what happened with you, but you said you were burnt. But again, it is the relationship. So, I mean, I'm not just going to go find a random company that they're a security services company because they may not have the same reputation as me. They may not have the same business ethic as me. So if you're going to do that, then you make sure you do your due diligence.
My situation, I went through the partnership with a minority-owned business, and they were looking for more small businesses, but basically they were only trying to partner up with the small business to say they work with a small business, and then totally took the lead and gave us like little bit of business and then kicked us to the curb, and we didn't get repeat business after that. They just used our business to get their foot in the door.
Well, see, in that situation, because that's happened, and it can happen. In that situation, that's when you contact the company that you're doing the business with. And I'll use an example of one of our contracts that we have in place with Philadelphia Gas Works. We do a subcontract with the Philadelphia Gas Works where Allied Universal is the prime contractor. But what I've done is I have developed a relationship with the contracting officer. And that contracting officer is minority. So the diverse spend officer, they pay attention. And part of their job is to pay attention. It's just, for instance, it's just like that. So that the larger companies don't come in, use the small company to get in the door, and then push the small company out. And so in that situation, that's when you contact that contracting officer or that diversity officer to say, hey, this is what's happening, and let them know, give them facts, and let them know, because they'll be able to look at the spend.
Right.
They'll be able to go and look at the spend and say, okay, of that spend of the X number of dollars we've given your company, how much of it went to Debbie's company?
Right. And that's what I started doing. When I start partnering with these companies now, I always want to make sure that I know what their commitment is to the second tier or third tier spend, and making sure it gets to us. Because if I'm coming in as a small business, I want to make sure that I'm going to be represented equally and treated fairly.
Well, and one of the ways you make sure and you ensure that is when you do your partnership agreement, do you have them sign off on what the percentage of business they're going to give you?
Okay.
So if they've committed to 20% of the total contract, make sure it's in that contract. Whatever your partnership is, make sure you got it in writing. So that way you can always pull out the contract and say, you're in breach of contract because we're only getting 10% of the 20%.
And that's the hard part for us females, because we be like, oh man, that sucks, and then we let it go. But the male, y'all be like, wait a minute, give me my coins, and y'all go back and fight the contract. And I think we always seem to let it go easier and be like, whatever's for me was for me, and we'll just move on. How do you as I guess like Steve Harvey say, think like a man and tough it up when it comes to situations that's sticky?
Well, I mean, certainly. Again, now one of the things that I make sure that I do when I do a partnership with the company, and I'll throw PGW back out there again, I make sure they know who sovereign security is. When I say they, I mean the client, the contract officer, the diversity officer. Everybody knows who sovereign security is. And so when it comes time to making sure that the rubber meets the road, that's when you say to them, hey, we're not getting it. We're not getting what you committed to. And that's when you go back to your prime and say, you're not living up to the agreement. And if they're not living up to the agreement, that's when you go after them, whoever you're dealing with there, and say, you got to put their feet to the fire. You have to put their feet to the fire.
Right. And I guess in my instance, with my promotional products firm is where I'm struggling the most. With the call center, I'm doing okay with, but the promotional product firm, because now that I'm going back into corporate world, before I was just only dealing with small businesses, so it didn't really get that sticky. But now I'm going into the MBAs and big companies like yourselves, that it's getting a little sticky, because now everybody's trying to get that African American spin, women owned spin, and it's like real dogmatic out there now.
Sure. Well, again, as I've said before, it's all about the relationship also. So, you definitely got to develop those relationships with, like I said, the contracting officer or the diversity spend officer. And I mean, I've gone, and it's not like you're going behind their back. I've contacted when we first got our contract with PGW, I contacted them myself and said, hey, I'm Rick Cottom. I'm president of Sovereign Security. We're going to be doing business with you guys, blah, blah, blah. And that's where you start to develop the relationship.
Okay. So it's never too late to do a dog and pony show.
No, not at all. Not at all. You're on mute.
I went back and looked at all the notes from starting over during that whole time of pivoting and trying to figure things out again. I had this whole notebook because I keep everything. I'm like, oh man, Ricky took me here. He said this, that, and the other. And every time I went back to the step by step and did everything you said to do, stuff just started opening up like crazy. And I was like, what took me so long to actually listen? But
it's all about if you listen and you started doing it, so that's all that matters. That's all that matters.
So share, brag on yourself. Tell everybody all the things that you've actually accomplished in sovereign security. Like, I know you won several awards for being CEO of the year and stuff like that.
Now, Deb, you're embarrassing me, man. we have been blessed. When I first started out, we were one of the fastest growing. We won a couple awards in terms of fastest growing companies and fastest growing private companies. We were number 9 in the country through I forget, that one was inner city capitals. And they were an organization that basically take the revenues and look at the revenues of various companies throughout the country. And so I was surprised at that one myself when we got that one. But, one of the things that, like I said, when I started was to make sure that I put the company first, obviously put God first, but certainly start to be obedient and do the stuff that he wanted me to do.
Right.
Because sometimes we think we know our way and we really don't. And as I said, when we first started, I was blocking my own blessing being at Drexel when I should have left long before then.
Ooh.
But I mean, it's better late than never.
Right.
It's better late than never. But I mean, we've been around for 17 years, and I currently have about 240 some employees. So I can't complain. I can't complain. I'm thankful every day. And one of the things you said, you had heard a rumor that I was looking to retire. I'm not looking to retire. As long as I'm still having fun, Deb, I'm not going anywhere. Although I do have my son learning the business. So at some point, I can continue the step further and further away, because I do enjoy traveling. And so, he's learning the business. So at some point, he will be able to take over the business for me.
Now that in itself is a blessing, because when I started my business, it was to create a legacy. And then my kids was like, oh, we don't want to do that. That's too much. All the people you talk to and the gray hairs you got so fast, we don't want to do that. So how does it feel knowing that you actually created something that they want to be a part of?
Well, it actually made me feel good, because, one of the things when I started was I never thought that this company would be a legacy company. My thought was, all right, this industry is something that I love, not necessarily something that my son loves. As you know, he was a professional football player and, a pilot. So, I mean, I figured, after he's finished playing football, he was going to just go ahead and start flying, do his career in flying. But, last year he called me, he was living in Seattle, and he called me and said, Dad, I'm ready to come back and learn the business. And so I said, okay, but as a legacy business, you just can't bring them in at the top.
Right.
And I told him, I said, you're going to have to learn the business from the ground up because you weren't a part of the business when we first started. And in order for you to be able to run this business and carry it on, you got to know all aspects of the business. But I am proud in the fact that he decided it was his decision. I didn't ask them, didn't throw it on him. It was his decision to want to be a part of the business. And so it made me feel good because he wanted to maintain the legacy and continue on the business. Because my thought was, all right, I'm gonna grow it. And then when I'm ready to leave, I'll just sell it. And I've had a lot of offers to buy me out and buy the company. And I'm just like, no, I'm not interested.
Okay. That's pretty cool. I'm still waiting for mine to come back. My oldest, she started like with the promotional product. She started doing her own T-shirt line. I'm like, and she brought all this equipment, like lots of dollars worth of equipment. And I'm like, girl, I got that same stuff already, right? But she wanted to do it her own way. So I'm just moving my hands back and be like, I'm here when you're ready. So, but
that's all you can do.
Yeah. And that was a hard lesson too, because I remember grandma saying, you want to leave a legacy, and that's all I created it for. And sometimes their dream is just not your dream.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I definitely appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to come impart some wisdom on us and share with us some things. We have we're just trying to strategize for next year. I know it's a little late. Normally I start strategizing in second quarter for the next year, but I got so much going on that I was a little late. I'm like, wait a minute, the whole year went by, and I'm like, I'm still plotting out stuff. So
yeah, well, it's hard to believe this year went as fast as it did. I literally just said that yesterday, that I can't believe we are in December.
Right, and it just seemed like yesterday we were saying Happy New Year, you know. And so I was like, oh my God, I haven't even done anything. And with me having so many entities, so because I have the call center, I have the nonprofit, I started writing, and then my health issues, I was like, I gotta wait. And then I just asked the question, who else needs to start planning for next year? And then all these folks was like me and needing help and needing direction. So I was like, okay, I know some people, let's get a call together and we'll strategize it out together and be some business buddies and just work it out and strategize together. So next week on the call, for folks like myself who sometimes need a kick in the butt and reset yourself, I have a resetologist coming on. In the third week, we're talking about strategic foresighting. And then the last week, we're talking about writing grants, proposals, RFPs, and stuff like that.
Sure.
So, but I do thank you for taking time out to talk with us. Michelle, do you have anything that you want to ask a question?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, ma'am.
Oh no, I don't have any questions. I was pulling up websites whenever he would mention things that we should be a part of. So I'm gonna be looking into that.
And we're going to connect back later to of course, I'm going to send the replay out here, but we can connect back. And feel free to send me any questions that you might have so I can answer those for you as we go along through this series.
Okay, thank you so much.
And likewise, for those who are on the phone and on Facebook and YouTube and all that jazz, feel free to send me an email asking questions, and we'll make sure we get that out to you. But and Rick, I thank you so much.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Never. Oh man, I've been waiting to do this forever, and then I kept saying, "No, he's too busy. He's too busy."
Never too busy for family and other business owners. Trust me.
I remember that.
It's funny because I literally just said, I was just talking to a friend of mine in Washington today, and I said, our generation in our generation, we probably have the most entrepreneurs that I can recall.
Right.
And I'm that excited.
Yeah.
That, we have a lot of entrepreneurs in our family that are just looking to, let's just change it up. Let's stop working for somebody else, and we're going to work hard. We might as well work hard for ourselves.
Yep. And you know what made me realize that? I would go into these corporations and go all the way up to vice president, senior vice president, make all this money for them and still walk away like, what? And for them to steal my ideas. Like, I literally had so many ideas of mine stolen from my upper management and marketed as their own that I was like, never again. I'm not doing that anymore. If I'm going to work this hard, get to the top for you, I'm going to do it for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it excited me when I finally started listening to you. I took those same corporate policies and put it into my own business, and I'm getting the same type of revenue and response. So I just had to get out my own way.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, we that's what we got to do. We do have to get out of our own way.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, I appreciate you for taking time out to talk with us, and have a happy new year. If I don't talk to you, in a prosperous year, and tell everybody I said hey.